The fair value gap, one of the most powerful concepts in trading. This exact strategy has led me to many profitable trades in my career. But the problem is, many traders actually use it incorrectly, causing them to lose money from it. The most confusing part about trading the fair value gap is figuring out which ones are most likely to work. But here's the truth. Not all fair value gaps are equal. Some have a much higher chance of being profitable than others. In this video, I'll reveal the secret hacks to help you spot which fair value gaps have the highest chance of success. And as a bonus, I'll also reveal the top 3 trading strategies using the fair value gaps that I use to land consistent profits. So without further ado, let's dive in. First, what is a fair value gap? A fair value gap is a formation on a chart that involves price moving sharply towards one direction, forming a gap on the candlestick. Often the price is then drawn back to the gap like a magnet, as it attempts to retest or fill the gap. Traders can then look to enter a position at the gap, aiming to profit as price tends to bounce off after retesting it. To plot a fair value gap, you first need to identify a 3-candle sequence. Then, look for a large candle between 2 smaller candles, where the high of the first candle and the low of the third candle do not overlap with the middle candle. The gap between the high of the first candle and the low of the third candle is called the fair value gap. Next, you can draw a rectangle on the chart to mark the gap. This concept also applies to the bearish setups. Remember, if there's no gap between the high of the first candle and the low of the third candle, then there is no fair value gap, regardless of how large the second candle is. Alright, so now you know how to spot and draw a fair value gap. However, as I mentioned earlier, not all fair value gaps are equal. Some have a much higher chance of giving you a profitable trade. So now, I'm going to share 5 hacks that I use to help you identify which fair value gaps are the most profitable. Number 1. To ensure that a fair value gap has a high chance of success, it needs to remain what's called unmitigated, which means not tested. And so, whenever you see a fair value gap on a chart, you need to make sure that it hasn't been retested by the price yet, because the effectiveness of a fair value gap decreases once the price touches it for the first time. For example, if you see a fair value gap that forms, but you also notice that the price has already retested it, then it's no longer an effective fair value gap. Another important thing to note is that the price shouldn't retrace too deeply to the point where it closes below the gap. If it does, then the fair value gap is also invalidated. So the best fair value gap entry is when the price hasn't retested it before. And when it does retest for the first time, make sure it doesn't break below the gap. Number 2. Whenever you spot multiple fair value gaps on one setup, such as this example, always prefer the ones with large size. Larger fair value gaps, such as this one, almost always work better compared to smaller ones, because they represent a stronger imbalance between buyers and sellers. This means they are more likely to act as stronger areas of support or resistance. Moving on to number 3. If you found a setup with multiple fair value gaps that are about the same size, and none stand out as significantly larger, you'll need to filter them out based on their position. The ones you use are the fair value gaps located in the lower portion of the move, which usually has a higher chance of working. But to do this more precisely, you'll need a tool. On a charting platform like TradingView, you can use the Gambox tool. You then go to Settings and set the price levels to 0, 0.5, and 1. To use the tool, you drag it from the swing low to the swing high of the movement that contains multiple fair value gaps. This line in the middle separates the fair value gaps, and you should only focus on the gap